Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the regular scheduled monthly meeting of the Romeo Downtown Development Authority. It is Monday, October the 5th. Join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lisa, can you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Carr? Humphreys?
Here.
Malzahn?
Here.
Brandt?
Here.
Rose?
Here.
Hayes?
Here.
Poznanski? Parker? Stevens?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Did you get Parker?
Yeah, I said Parker.
Okay.
I didn't hear him. Is he here?
He's here.
Okay.
He's just
Okay.
muted.
Can I have a motion for the approval of the agenda for this evening?
Yes.
Can we, Lisa, can we just add on there under new business, the procedures for the FOIA requests? I think I asked that to be added on Friday, but I think you said it already went out.
Is that something that you would typically put on an agenda?
Well, we've never dealt with it before, so I mean, I think we should all just be aware of what this calls for. Do we have something in place for that? You know, so I would just like to add it under new business for discussion.
Okay, we can go ahead. Lisa, go ahead and add that then.
All right.
And then I had, and I don't know, maybe unfinished business, if we could add a subtitle to the monthly agenda of a Village Hall update on possible new businesses.
Okay, so you want that under old business?
Unfinished business, yeah.
Okay, unfinished business?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you want that written?
Just village update on possible new business. Village Hall update, possible new businesses.
So I have that we're going to add under new business, we're going to add FOIA, discussion of FOIA procedures.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Unfinished business, we're going to add Village Hall update on possible new businesses.
Yes.
Okay. Someone to make motion?
So with those changes, could I have somebody make a motion to approve this evening's agenda, please?
I'll make a motion.
I heard two. Who was first?
Go ahead, Carol.
All right.
Will you second it, Zach?
Yep, I'll second. Second Hayes.
Okay. All right, so Humphreys,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Malzahn,
Yes.
Brandt,
Yes.
Tar is absent.
No, he's there.
Is he here? Tar? Is he muted?
He's not muted, but he was having some difficulty with his phones. So, Greg, if we can't still hear you, if you want to just call in, I can put you on speakerphone, maybe easier.
I'm here. Hello.
Oh,
Hello?
there you
Okay.
go.
Okay. I've been here the whole time. I don't know what happened, but I got you.
Okay, so yes, Tar?
Yes.
Okay. Rose?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Poznanski here yet?
Yes, I'm here. I'm
Okay.
John Krasinski on the screen, though. Sorry.
Well, that's okay. Are you a yes on the motion?
Yes.
Okay, and Stevens?
Yes.
Okay. You have it was approval. Motion carried.
I need next an approval of September's remote meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Second, Hayes.
Roll call, Lisa?
Okay. Grant,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Tar, Rose,
Yes.
Poznanski,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Malzahn,
Yes.
Humphrey, Humphreys, Tar,
Here, yes.
okay, and Stevens.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. I think we need somebody to mute their phones or something in the background.
I think that was Greg Tarr's phone, but he's
Okay.
muted, he's back muted now.
Okay, next up, we have the treasurer's report. Carol?
Skipped over public forums.
I've got lots of stuff.
Oh, hold on. Do we have anybody on here for public forum for this evening's meeting?
I thought we had a bunch of people who showed up.
They showed up, but do they want to talk?
Well, why don't we recognize them later if they want to, or have them reserve the right? If they bothered to show up, they may not be familiar with how to do whatever we're doing.
It's on the screen right now. Bill, if you can't,
Yeah.
just for anybody who doesn't know that, you can raise your hand on that feature. You can hold the space bar when you want to talk. You can dial *9 if you're on your phone, or you can type in questions using the chat window.
Are there any questions coming in, Christine?
I don't see any.
All right, at this point, I'm going to close the public forum and go on to Carol Humphreys with the treasurer's report, please.
I apologize that it didn't get here till today. However, I was homesick, so it's what it is. Since I didn't do one last month, I combined the two of them. And so we have two flower and plant payments and two telephone payments. And we have...
I'm sorry, Carol, but we did approve the bills last month.
You did do them?
We did.
We did.
Oh, okay. Let me subtract those off then. Hold on a minute. I have to see how much they were. $5,085.94. The nice thing about being in my office, I can get my adding machine. Okay, in that case, we have one flower and plant. We have one telephone bill. We have no payroll taxes. And we have actually four payrolls for Lisa because she didn't turn hers in right away. So those are for 2 months.
Carol, part of those were approved last month.
Part of them were? I don't think so.
Yes, number 1189, 1190, and 1191 were approved last month.
Really? Okay. Then I have the wrong amount here. For the wrong envelope. Hang on a minute. How much was approved last month?
Approval for last month was made by $8,561.82.
8,000.
561.82.
82. Okay, then we got a lot less. I think we approved one of the plant waterings. I think there were 2 last month. So we only have to approve 1 telephone bill and 1 paycheck, $610.04. That's $9,171.86 minus the $85.61.82 that was approved last month. So that's $610.04 left over.
I'll make a motion to approve the bills at $610.04 for the 1 payroll, 1 flower, and 1 telephone bill.
Okay. I'll second. Can I?
Yes. Okay, Melzon,
Yes?
Humphreys,
Yes.
Poznanski,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Tar, Tar. Is he still with us?
He is on there, but yeah. He's,
Mr. Tar?
Yes, I'm here. I'm
Thank
here.
you. Brandt
Yes.
and Stevens.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. The other thing is we did receive money last month. We received a check from Bruce Township for their summer collection of $14,646.06. We received interest from the bank of $8.76. And we received money from Romeo, the Village, the $11,500, which is the final judgment payment. And then the TIF for Romeo, which is $98,132.06. If you'll look on the chart that I sent over today, it's the revenue chart for 2021. It shows those checks where they fall in the chart. I'm showing that we should get another $29,900 between now and the end of the year. And then there'll be another $53,600 coming in March of 2021. So we do have about $83,000 more coming in than what we have right now. And our current balance that we have in our checking accounts are $222,696.96. Typically, we need to keep in reserve at least $30,000 to run the DDA to cover our bills. That's normally, and then we'll need to keep money in there to cover our Christmas, which is basically around $12,000 to $13,000 between that and Halloween. So I know we have some other things to discuss later at that time. If you'll look at the next document that I sent over, it was the budget versus the actual. And that one shows how much we budgeted for this year, how much money we've spent this year. And as you see, the red items are earmarked where I feel that we can take the money for the items. One that we've already obligated ourselves for is the $45,000 for the LED lighting for downtown. And the second one we're going to discuss tonight, the possibility of crosswalks. And we do have money to pay for that also. So, and my suggestion would be if it's not going to be done till 2021, then we take that money out of our budget right now and put it in a CD so that it's ready when it all happens and we don't spend that money. Anybody have any other opinions?
Okay, I need a motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented.
We already did that.
We approved the bills paid. We don't have to do the
We
budget?
usually do the bills and the treasurer's report all in one.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you, Carol.
Welcome.
She
So-
wanted approval to put money in the CD.
Well, that's if we decide to do the crosswalks.
Should we wait to discuss that when it comes up under new
Right.
business?
I think so, yep.
Yep. I was just giving my opinion.
Okay, this evening we have a special presentation on our crosswalks by Paul O'Mara from Row Engineering. Paul, if you're
No.
ready.
Don't we have to do Lisa's director's report?
Yes.
All right, you can forget me. I don't mind. I did all of the normal, in-office stuff. Replied to emails, updated the website, typed meeting minutes, replied to emails, listened to our 4 phone calls that we got, and responded. The village auditors are already working on audit, so I provided them the information that they requested from me. They sent me a letter to put on the DDA letterhead for them to return to Attorney Kevin Kilby. I signed that and returned that to them. I went and discussed the budget with Carol. I know there was some concern about light purchases and where to take the money from. I talked with Matt and Lisa Jaroche about doing the fall lighting install, and as you can see, they are installed. And Christine, while I'm thinking about it, the light by Mary Raymond's office, the pole, there's something wrong with it. So if you could have that, have somebody look at that, that would be great. Contacted Sean about the fall decor and the baskets, and it looks to me like he's got most of them done. I revised the Christmas lighting bid and posted it on the website so we could get quotes, so we could, get this going. I did remove it today. It has been up, and we did only receive 1 bid. I did contact, after talking with Matt, there was concern about those poles that hold the banners. Those poles have ever only held banners is what I understand after talking to Tim. So there was a concern about the weight of those pieces that you approved for purchase. I sent out an email last Friday. I talked to Kelly, I talked to Megan, and I talked to Christine. Those pieces weighed 140 pounds apiece. Nobody was sure that those poles would hold those lights without coming down. It was recommended that we get an engineer to look at that and determine that. After talking with Christine and Megan and talking with Kelly a little bit, and I didn't get an email back from anybody responding to that, I had to make the decision to not purchase those lights because it is a safety issue. And until we get those poles looked at, nobody's going to put those up. Nobody's going to hang those lights and take that responsibility that if those poles came down and hurt somebody, nobody wants that responsibility. So I hope you understand. I did not order those over the lights, over the street banners. I did talk with the company that makes them. They said they do a huge sale in January and February. If we find out from an engineer that those poles are capable of holding those, then we can look at the pricing in January and February and possibly save some money. Again, I did speak with Tim about the poles, the cables, the weight capacity, the brackets. we need an engineer to look at that. We need an engineer to look at that before we try and hang something up there. I wouldn't want to be any part of hanging those up there and having somebody get hurt. I did order the other lights for the Christmas trees. I ordered the bows. I sent out the letters about the crosswalks for the presentation tonight. And I contacted all of the clerks for the informational meeting and created the package for the informational meeting. So that is what I did for the month.
Should we then not be looking at getting an opinion from a structural engineer to rate the stuff for us?
I believe we should. I wasn't sure, if that was something that we wanted the village to do, or if the DDA wanted to contact some structural engineers and have them come look at it, or how we wanted to handle that. So I wanted to ask everyone's opinion tonight, how you feel
Who
it.
owns the poles? Who owns the poles?
The village owns the poles. We have to ask the village permission to put things on the poles. Tim said that the poles were done, I think he said about 10 years ago, but I don't know what the depth is. So again, I just wanted to ask the board how they want to handle this. If we want to ask the village if they can have a structural engineer look at them, be taken care of.
No one's going to give an opinion until they know more information than that, like digging down there and finding out. Mark Simpson is the only local structural engineer or general engineer that I know of. There are probably others around, but I just don't know who it would be.
I mean, I know there's quite a few in Shelby Township, but I didn't know if I knew Mark was here, but I didn't know if we had any other engineers in the village or not. And I wasn't sure if they were structural engineers or exactly what they were, so.
I do know Mark does structural engineering, but I'm not pushing him because he's one of my tenants. It's just we ought to make some type of. You don't put out a request for quotation on it. We need to hire a structural engineer, is what you're saying,
Right.
Christine, do you have some thoughts on this, Madam President?
Well, my thought is that you could probably work with Bro Engineering. You could probably call Mark Simpson. I'm sure that you could find someone. Yes, the village owns those light poles, but again, we don't hang stuff from it anymore. So we used to have Whitcomb who would do that. He warned us a while ago that the tension cables that were coming off those poles were not taut enough, and he wasn't comfortable even hanging an over the street banner, let alone a 140-pound Christmas decoration. So since we're not clearly going to be able to order it and get it in time for Christmas, I think you can reassess and figure out, in January, if you're going to make this purchase, or even in December, if you want to spend a few bucks to get a quote from an engineer to what would they cost, what would they charge to do that, probably is wise if you're thinking that that's the route you want to go for Christmas decor down the road, or you just go to a different plan and stick to the lamppost like we have.
So Les has already advised us that, in his opinion, we shouldn't even be hanging banners there?
Correct.
Well, it looks to me like they're probably shot then, because certainly he's the guy who would know.
I don't know if he meant the poles or there's a cable that the banner actually attaches to, so it's holds it on both ends. I think it was the cabling system, not the pole. I'd probably have to have another conversation, or somebody would, with Whitcomb to verify exactly what their concern was, because they haven't hung banners when they sold their equipment, so they haven't hung the banners in several years. Our police department are doing it as training.
Les has left that business and is no longer associated with it.
Yeah, but Larry might be able to answer your question.
So do we suggest that we hire somebody to come out and take a look at these poles to get ready to purchase at a discount price in January or February.
I mean, right. I would just suggest that you have Lisa send out an RFQ or an RFP, just to find out what it would cost, and then bring it back for the next board meeting, and then decide if you want to spend the money.
Okay, Lisa. I think that's the way to go.
Okay.
Okay, now we're going to go on to our crosswalk presentation by Paul O'Meara from Row Engineering. Paul?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Good. The first item in the presentation there was the first letter that I sent to President Malzahn back about a month ago. So I'll just hit a few of the high points there in the letter. I'm assuming there's some people attending tonight that were not at your overview last month. We're estimating a project that's about $384,000, and I'll break down that number into different pieces in a minute. But there's the largest component in that cost would be to reconstruct the sidewalks at 7 different intersections throughout the downtown area so that they're accessible, meeting today's American Disabilities Act requirements. So the ramps would be built so that it would encourage people across the main streets, either Main Street or St. Clair, depending on where you're at. And there would also be an enhanced crosswalk material placed on the main street so that it would also encourage people to use the designated crosswalk as well as pedestrian crossing signs to encourage the vehicles to slow down and watch for pedestrians to make it a safer environment than it is today. The crosswalk material would be a thin, like 1/4-inch thick concrete surface material that is only, like I say, it's only a 1/4-inch thick, so it doesn't really change the depth of the road. It's a relatively simple installation, and it's intended to last as long as the pavement does that's underneath it, so it's got a long service life. And it would be a brick pattern is what we're recommending. If you drive M59 in Sterling Heights last year, a similar design was used at several intersections there in the Lakeside Mall area. So it looks like it's a brick pavement that you're walking on, but it's obviously much simpler to construct than a real pavement would be. And then there would also be white line edges on each side of the crosswalk to bring in more attention to the drivers. And I'll get into the details of the different locations in a minute when we pull up the various sketches, but just to review the dollars and cents of it, we're estimating the construction cost at about $312,000, and we're suggesting applying for a grant. The grant can be anywhere between, there's a local match that's required that needs to be at least 20%, and based on the way the grant is set up, they are encouraging you to volunteer for a bigger match than the 20% if you can handle that. And typically the successful candidates on average have been volunteering to pay 35% of the local match. So that's what we're suggesting. A local match in this case would be about $109,000 that the village and the DDA would contribute. So the grant value would be a little over $200,000 then for the 65% left for construction. And then there's also the ancillary costs of actually designing the project, putting it out for bid, and also administering the contract once it's under construction. These will be federal dollars that are being spent, so there's extra monitoring that has to go on with the local agency to make sure that the money is being spent correctly and that all the rules are being followed. So that would be about another $72,000. So that's all included in that $384,000 that I mentioned. That last $72,000 would have to be 100% paid locally. So the local responsibility would be about $180,000 to cover both the construction and the design and the administration. If you want to move ahead on the screen there, we can look at some of the actual proposals. So there's recommendations to do work at 7 different intersections, the main intersection of Main and St. Clair, and then radiating out in all 4 directions, with 5 of them being on 5 of the intersections will be on Main and 2 on St. Clair. So starting from the north end at Main Street and Church, we're showing a picture there with the crosswalk in front of the library. There would be some additional pavement added on the south corners there to make crosswalk ramps there on both sides, and that's a relatively simple installation there. And it shows there that there would be pedestrian crosswalk signs on both sides of the road, with the signs facing on both sides too, so that the motorists see it on both sides of the street coming in either direction. Do you want to go forward? And Main Street in Newberry is probably the most complicated intersection to reconstruct. If you look at the upper right corner picture there, Main and Newberry is the southwest side of the corner. In front of the Masonic Temple there, that front door to the Masonic Temple is quite high compared to the road. So to meet today's standards where the slopes of the sidewalk are very gentle, would require a lot of reconstruction of that sidewalk area from what it is today, because there's quite a slope going down from the door down to the street. So if you can see that in the plan view, there's a, it's pretty difficult to see, I know, because the way the aerial turned out, the building hangs over the sidewalk the way the camera picture was taken from the satellite. So it's a little difficult to understand there. But I drew the ramp over the area where the reconstruction would be. You can see a green rectangle there that would kind of represent a planter box, so that down by the road would be one level of sidewalk, and then it would slowly slope up to get up to the front door of the Masonic Temple, and then there would be a set of steps on the south side of the planter box, if that makes sense, so that the sidewalk would actually be 2 levels in that area in order to meet the requirements. That one's more complicated than the rest. Okay, we can go forward. Then at Main and St. Clair, we've got ramps that already exist on the 2 easterly corners, so those would not be reconstructed. The ramps on the west side are there, but they're quite old and do not meet today's standards, and the pavement is in rough shape. So we're recommending that those would be replaced with the new ramps. And then a new enhanced crosswalk would be on all 4 legs of the intersection to make it much more welcoming. And then moving on to the next intersection at Lafayette, going south on Main still, we're recommending that there would also be bump outs on this intersection similar to Newberry, so that the road would be narrowed. The crosswalk would not be as long of a distance for people to make the journey across the street. And the construction here is relatively simple compared to the Newberry one, because the grades are much flatter. And you can see on the right pictures, there would be existing street taken out and replaced with sidewalk, and potentially you could also add some planter boxes there as well, just to break up the concrete. And then moving on to the next street further south. The last one on the Main Street that's being recommended is at Main and Washington. And so that's a relatively simple construction as well, to reconstruct the 2 north corners, provide ramps to cross Main Street, and then also replace the sidewalks and put in the enhanced crosswalk across the street there. And then moving on, we've got 2 more intersections to look at, both on St. Clair. And going to the west of the main downtown intersection at Rawls. This intersection is a bit unique. If you can picture, the street doesn't line up right now, but it does have a good opportunity there to build one crosswalk that would serve both sides of Rawls and encourage people to feel that they could cross there. Traffic would not stop, so there are obviously times a day where there'd be vehicles backing up into the intersection, but having the marked crosswalk there and the signs, I think, would encourage drivers to still watch out for people trying to cross. And then finally, the last one is at St. Clair and Bailey. So the pavement is newer there. There wouldn't be any need for any repairs. I did forget to mention there are a few spots on some of the other intersections where there would have to be some asphalt repairs because the road is in rough shape. So that is included in this cost. But for the most part, there wouldn't be that many repairs needed. So here at St. Clair and Bailey, there would be, again, just one crosswalk, and the ramps would be reconstructed on both sides of the street in order to make that a safer transition. So we put together an application. Oh, and there's a few other pictures here. We're recommending the picture on the left for the signage. That tends to be the more standard one that drivers recognize. But there is a newer alternative if you like this yield here to pedestrians. It has a different message, but it does encourage people to actually recognize the state law that if there's a pedestrian present, you're supposed to yield to them and not proceed through in your vehicle. So we're open to suggesting either one of those, and that decision can be made later too. It doesn't have to be made right now. And then there's just an advertisement there for the Endura Blend product. That is a proprietary material. It's not something that lots of contractors can supply. It's pretty unique, but it's been installed in other places in rough environments like Michigan for over 10 years now, and it's holding up very well. So we think it's a good product that's proven itself well. So we're in the process of putting together an application that's actually due next week, or almost about a week and a half from now, October 14th, it's due. And it's almost finished at this point. To be able to submit that to SEMCOG and MDOT. They have a committee that would overlook all the applications throughout the Metro Detroit area. And they obviously got a certain amount of money that they can disperse. So only about 1/3 of the applicants are successful, or actually maybe 25% are historically successful at getting a grant. We think that this one's actually got a pretty good opportunity because I've heard that MDOT does like to encourage pedestrian activity in downtown areas, and just pedestrian activity in general should be safer than what it is today in Romeo. And then there's also a geographic component that they like to spread the money out throughout the Metro Detroit region. And there's actually been very few TAP grants issued to this part of Macomb County. So I think that's a good sign as well. As a part of the grant, we need to try to estimate the construction timing. So the quickest we could go is they take, unfortunately, at least 6 months or so to decide who's going to win the grant. But once that decision is made, we would be able to move forward with the design and get it to MDOT in the summer of 2021. MDOT then takes a long time to review it and make sure that it meets all their standards. And then it would be bid out in the winter of 2021 and not actually built until 2022.
Excuse me, how long does it take from the time they start construction till the end?
I'm envisioning that it's it's probably just like a 4-week process. And I would recommend, at least you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming the traffic's a bit lighter in the summer when people leave town and go elsewhere, more vacationing, and there's not school activity on the street. So that we would like to do it probably at a time when there's less traffic involved, but you've got to do it during the warm weather as well. So I would recommend doing it in the heat of the summer, like July.
I have a quick question. So the TAP grant value, you have it at just over $200,000. I believe at the last meeting you mentioned that, that's just, we won't necessarily get that full amount, correct? It's possible we could get a much smaller amount that would be approved for the project?
No, actually, if they approve the grant, my understanding is they would approve it for the value that we're requesting here. The catch is that if the bids come in higher than what's expected, the lowest bidder wants more than what we've estimated, that extra cost would be the village's to pick up.
And Christine, how do you see this this $109,000 obligation? Is it a proposed 50-50 split between the DDA and the village?
Well, you have to add in the 71.6 also for the planning, design, and administration. So the total village responsibility, let's consider that the 180,000, right? Because
okay.
we would have to pay for both parts. And yes, I would anticipate budgeting in our 21-22 fiscal year budget, 90,000 from our Act 51 money, and the money that we have in our local streets. And then a $90,000 input from the DDA, from your tax capture from your TIF.
And any overages, would that also be split between the DDA and the village?
I would potentially think yes, if the estimates are coming back, outside of the scope of work, or we then reduce the scope of the project to, account for that.
Yeah, because even just looking at this, I mean, just the Main Street at Newberry portion of it is estimated at 109,000. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, I kind of broke down the costs by intersections so that you could see that some are much more complex than others. And that is the one that we're suggesting is the most expensive.
Yeah, that's a lot just for one part there, but we don't necessarily have to do it all.
Well, actually, if you bid out a contract to contractors in this environment, they're going to expect to either get it all or nothing. They're not going to be able to negotiate a piecemeal thing after the bids have been issued.
But I'm saying, like, prior to, if we decided not to include that in the scope of work.
Oh, sure. You can do that.
Oh, I have a question. You mentioned here that this crosswalk project does not fit with the current master plan of the village.
Well, I just wanted to caution that when the master plan was envisioned, it was complete reconstruction of the streets. So that involved narrowing the streets, putting a different traffic pattern with angled parking. So the dimensions that were being used for that would be different than what we're envisioning here. But I'm taking the tact in the grant application that it's following the spirit of the master plan and that it's using the same aesthetic ideas that were there in the master plan. But it's not something that you could spend this money now and then carry it on and actually benefit from it later on if you decide to reconstruct the entire street.
That streetscape project, Kelly, was where Roe originally was involved in the DDA when I was on that board, so probably 10 years ago. And that was like a $4.5 million project that we investigated and had, the drawings done. And then when it came time for public input and we looked at bonding and selling bonds to actually pay for it, the cost was just too high. So we decided to not move that forward. But I did have, I presented this project to Steve Casson, our master planner. He is writing or intending to write a letter of support to submit with this application. I've also requested letters of support from John Paul Ray at the county and from Commissioner Don Brown. Both I've spoken to, and they're both in favor of lending their weight to help make our application as acceptable as possible to hopefully move it to the top of the list.
Do we have the option, if this grant money does not come back at what we anticipate, to back out of the project?
I think they're going to either issue an award for what you're asking for or nothing. They won't come back and say you can get a certain piece of it.
Okay.
Because if there's overages, we have to pay them. And so if we only have $90,000 to offer this project, we don't have the extra money to come up with overages if we have to do the whole project and not line item things out. Is that right?
Well, I think what you're asking is if what would happen is, say that you get the grant and the bids are put together and it goes out for bid, then the contractors put out prices. If the prices come in much higher than what was expected, the Village of Romeo could say, wait a minute, we don't want to do this at this cost. We can't afford to do this anymore, and just stop it right there.
And we put a cap on the amount that we want to give towards this project?
I didn't understand that question.
The DDA, could it give a cap to the project saying, we'll give you 90, if it goes up to 100, we can handle that. After that point, that's the cap. Can we do that?
Not to exceed amount, Carol?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be between the DDA and the village at that point, right?
Right, yeah, the village would have to agree to accept that risk.
And as far as the layout goes, those bump outs are not going to eliminate any existing parking spaces, correct?
Correct.
Christine, where are we at on the current revenue sharing project for the LEDs?
DTE told me that they would be doing the work in the spring of 21. So that'll be in this current year fiscal, which is what Carol sort of highlighted. That money has already been earmarked out of your budget, as well as the village's budget for that project.
And we don't anticipate any sort of overages on that
I haven't
end?
been alerted to any. I spoke to him back after we passed the budget in July and told him that the project was a go. He's sending out some field workers to do some, pre-work, but said that none of the work could be done in 20. They were already, scheduled out. So he would get us on the schedule for the spring of 21. And he didn't anticipate to me that it would be any cost increases to what he proposed.
Can I ask, going back to Zach's point, if we decide to pick and choose what we want to do instead of the whole scope, would that affect our grant at all? Because when we're applying for this, we're saying we're going to do all of it and they'll grant the money possibly. And if we decide to back down and only do a few, would they take some of it back or do we still get it all?
I would think that if you want to cut out some of the intersections or some of the work, we should talk about that right now and make that decision as a part of the application. Because the grant submittal would be assuming that you're going to do what's suggested here. It's difficult to go back later and change your mind.
Okay, thank you.
What would you say would be the most crucial crosswalk that would need to be done, in your opinion?
Well, I'm not in your downtown, obviously, as much as you all are, but I'm assuming that the majority of the biggest amount of traffic is right there at the main intersection. And so you'd want to encourage people to use the traffic signal the most and implement that work there. And then secondarily, I would think trying to get vehicles to slow down at the outside edges of the downtown, the four outer ring ones, if you will, just to try to get the vehicles to slow down, assuming that that's a part of the equation here, is that we're trying to get the vehicles to slow down. Then you want to try to get the outer edge intersections next. But Christine, maybe you have a different vision of that.
No, that was pretty much it. When we looked, I was hoping to get a pedestrian traffic study done so that we could actually see where people are crossing. I mean, I don't know if they're just finding the first available parallel parking space and then they just, sort of dart across the road. Most people are not walking to the four corners, whether they do or not. We have had several pedestrian vehicle accidents. They're happening south of the light before mid-block. So Younger's, the office, Romeo Cafe, that's the biggest area of restaurants. And so I think that's one of the bigger concerns, that people aren't going to walk all the way up to the four corners to traverse Van Dyke to just go back a block to go to a restaurant or vice versa. So I think that's where we're getting some pedestrian safety issues. According to the County Road Commission, we don't really have a speed control issue. I think it's 25. I don't think that the traffic studies that they did warranted them reducing the speed limit in town. I don't think that was an option. But certainly the intent in creating a surface that feels different as your tires go over it, to alert. It looks different. It's red versus the gray of the asphalt. The signs that are there certainly alerts drivers to a pedestrian presence. And I think that will help for those, especially, if you're trying to get across 4 or 5 lanes of road, especially down at the Washington Street. I think that's probably one of the bigger crossing areas that we have in the Central Business District, as well as Newberry and Rawls, where there's zero crossing. I think we're going to be seeing those municipal lots being used a lot more, especially if we have a new restaurant that comes in here between Van Dyke and in Rawls where the old Lux Cleaner location is. People will be going across that alley to traverse St. Clair.
Will this increase or decrease our liability? The crosswalks not at the four corners without a light?
Liability. As long as we're following standards, I don't believe that there's a liability issue that, say if somebody gets hurt and they want to sue the village due to poor design or something of that sort, as long as you followed recognized standard practices, I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay.
So the four corners is like $62,000. Am I reading that properly?
Yes.
That's because the east side is already done. When they redid that, the biggest portion, if speak for Paul, or Paul, if you want to address this, the biggest cost in these projects is bringing it into ADA compliance, not just the striping, correct?
Right, yeah, I was actually surprised that the Endura blend part of the equation really isn't that big of a deal. It's the concrete and bringing the ramps up into current standards, because there's a lot of concrete work to do.
If we talked about just the four corners, and it certainly looked better, would it be possible to think that could actually be done this coming summer season, meaning 21?
If you want to go that fast, it would have to be 100% locally paid for. But then
it's $62,000.
Right. 62 plus, there'd still be design costs and administration, but it wouldn't be obviously as significant as the bigger project.
Administration, I guess I'm lost. If it's just our money, there's nothing to report to anybody else.
No, but I'm assuming that you still would want to have somebody there just for quality control and working with the contractor and making sure that they follow proper specifications so the village gets what they're requesting, so that they're not just operating in a vacuum.
So what kind of number would you be throwing at that?
I would suggest maybe $15,000. I'm just making a rough guess, because there's design costs. You need to put out a contract to bid still, so that you can get the lowest price.
So we'd be talking about $77,000, maybe $80,000.
Right.
We might be able to get more community support if they could see what it would actually look like, and if we did that. That's just a thought.
As a business on Main Street at the north end, I do see people darting in and out of the traffic down here. I think that has to be in consideration, the approaching and incoming and outgoing traffic.
Kelly, I'm sure my tenants would agree with you 10,000%. It does tend to isolate our little corner of the world because, well, it's just us.
Right.
And while it would be, I think, extremely advantageous to us, I'm not positive that there wouldn't be more municipal support if people could see, okay, this is what we want to do and this is where we want to do it. And an $80,000 number, if it was split between us and the village, seems to me something we could agree on and do, but maybe we can't.
Then you're taking out of the equation the TAP grant value to the whole project.
I understand that.
That's
Kelly.
Gene, have the police department done any particular studies as to accidents that may have occurred at different crosswalks? Have you checked into that at all?
There are 4 total pedestrian vehicle accidents. 2 that are more recent than the others, but again, they're mostly happening in that south quadrant on Main Street.
I know 2 of them that happened on Washington Street. I don't know where the other 2 were.
Kelly, that the Main Street in Newberry, that's your over by you, right?
Well, it would be the Masonic Temple in May, right?
Right. But I mean, that's the most expensive part of the project. As a business that's over in that area, would you want to pursue this project if that end of the if your block over there wasn't part of the scope of the work? Do you think it's not worth it if we were to forego that particular part just because of the cost?
Well, my question is, we're not ADH compliant, so I see the Masonic Temple holding a ton of activities and events in there, and you have that wonky sidewalk from their front door down. So I do see that as a benefit for the Masonic Temple. My suggestion is, what if we took off the bottom two on St. Clair? That would take off $54,000 and go for the Main Street ones.
Another suggestion might be for us to go to the Masonic Temple and ask them if they'd like to make some kind of contribution to this, since they'll benefit from it.
Are they paying the DDA tax, though?
They are.
They are, yeah. So they already are contributing.
Well,
You have to see how much they're contributing.
they only pay taxes against that portion that they get assessed for having rented out on a private basis.
Right.
It's a minuscule amount of money.
My only concern about only doing the Main Street ones at that point is now it's just the flow of traffic in one way. You know what I mean? You haven't solved your issues going east and west now. It's just a north and south thing, and there's quite a bit of traffic.
There is.
Do we need to slow that traffic down, because it already tends to back up, doesn't it?
Going east and west, yeah.
Right, it backs up, but then there's no place to cross because the cars are bumper to bumper. And so again, if you have a crosswalk there, at least there's a space that you can walk across, from the behind PNC across to the barber shop area or Bailey Street. I think it's eastbound St. Clair that backs up more than on the other side of the Four Corners, but.
And at this point, we would just be approving to submit the application, saying that we would partner on this, right? I mean, there's no money being spent at this point. We don't even know if that TAP grant's going to come through.
That's
well, no
correct.
money is being spent, but when you submit the application, you have to have a resolution that says you are budgeting for this project. You anticipate completing this work under this time frame for this amount of money. So yes, if you are going to vote for this tonight to have Paul submit the application next Wednesday, you are basically saying when you develop your 21-22 fiscal year budget, you're going to account for this bricks and mortar project.
Just as a side note, is everyone seeing this stuff popping up in chat? Do we need to address those, or are we going to address them at the end?
How do we normally, because I mean, if this was a normal meeting, there wouldn't be, how does that work? I'm not really sure.
It's really up to Kelly and how she wants to address it, because we already had public comment, but Bill requested that if anybody wanted to weigh in, that they certainly could, but it's up to the chair.
All right, I'm seeing 36 chats in there, and it looks like it's coming from basically one person, correct?
There's a few people.
Mm-hmm. There are two, yes.
2 people, and we have 16 participants on this call?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Anthony Riggy.
Mm-hmm.
How are you guys?
Good.
Just wanted to weigh in a little bit. In some of the other smaller cities that I drive through, they don't necessarily have that, Endura product down on the street, but they do have clearly printed, lines or vinyl striping with the signs that would help encourage drivers to slow down and allow people to cross at different intersections. So perhaps considering a blended approach, maybe using the red brick product at the four corners, but then doing some of the flat work, addressing the ramping issue for ADA, but using a less expensive approach with paint or vinyl that can be refreshed periodically, along with some of the signs that say, remind people that, you know, you must yield to pedestrians.
Anthony, do you feel like this would be a positive for your business down on St. Clair?
No impact.
Okay.
No, I mean, I don't want to see people get hurt, obviously, but I'd really also love to see some of the heavy traffic that comes east and west. Pleasant when your building shakes when a semi. So,
Right.
you know, there's certainly periodic speed issues.
Okay, thank you.
That is a different project, by the way, Anthony. I'll just touch on it. I did meet with the Macomb County Road Commission, and I also met with the schools district to address the light that's on Sisson and up across from the high school. And they are going to be looking at the last truck study, the truck route study that they did. It's been some time. I asked them to please initiate another study because it's a county maintained road. It is up to them to do that analysis. I mentioned a couple of residents that asked me to put in a no brake zone across at the top of the hill, some signage so that they're not as noisy when they come into town, as well as the speed. So they're looking at that, just to give you a heads up.
Thank you, Christine.
You're welcome.
So part of our mission and the purpose of the Romeo Downtown Development Authority is to correct and prevent deterioration in the Romeo Business District, to encourage historic preservation, to authorize the creation of development plans in the district and promote economic growth. Does that fit in with our mission?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's been
The
some
one thing
time.
Go ahead, Zach.
I was just going to say, I mean, to me, it seems like this is more of a safety thing, right? More so than anything.
Well, yeah. Plus, we're not ADH compliant.
But is that the DDA's responsibility?
Of course it is. It's our downtown. We want to make it safe and walkable for anybody that comes to town, whether you have a disability or if you're bringing just small children that might, need clearly defined slow down of traffic as you're traversing our town.
I did see a couple questions come up into the money that has already been spent for this presentation. Can you address how much money that has been spent already, Christine?
Correct. So I authorized, I believe it was $1,860. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul. And that was for him to do the presentation that you're seeing, to do the slides. There's an additional $1,100 that was approved at council level for him to or start at least prepping the application. Part of that is because of the timing. It's not our friend right now. The application process is due next week, October 14th. So waiting for us to have another meeting. Obviously, I gave you the overall at our last DDA meeting of the scope of work, and then we decided that we were going to talk about it again this month. And then I asked Paul to come back and give his presentation. So if we don't move forward with it now, then we will miss this application timeframe.
Right.
So then you're looking at next year.
I have a question for Paul in regards to Anthony's suggestion that you did the four corners with the proposed product. What is the cost factor to the striping of the pavement and signage in the other quadrants?
Well, I did know that cost was an issue back when we did the cost estimating. I did take the approach of taking out all the indoor blends at all the intersections and just putting in more normal pavement materials, marking materials, and that would have saved about $45,000 for the entire
Project.
district. So I don't have a number right off the top of my head if we do a partial thing.
So what he's suggesting, and I'm not quite familiar with that, is striping the pavement. What does that entail?
Well, that's the more standard, using the white lines. If you use the big rectangular bars that are more common now than they were in the past, that helps catch the motor signs and still does a lot of the same thing. It's just not as aesthetic, if you will.
Yeah, it's also done in combination with a diagonal white stripe so that it's very noticeable from what I've seen.
Right, yeah, it certainly does the same thing as far as calling attention to the motorists. And so there is a savings there. It's not as much as what I thought it would be because most of the cost is the concrete.
And the biggest problem is that we have to become ADA compliant no matter what we do, if we do anything.
Right, if you're going to improve the intersection at all, it needs to follow today's standards.
You can't just paint the lines in there and do that.
No, that would be a liability issue because then you're encouraging people to walk in an area where there's a curb. And that's not meeting today's standards.
Oh, am I correct to understand that this TAP grant is going to pay 65% of the cost of this project?
Of the construction, yes.
The village, if the DDA doesn't go with them, then the village would be responsible for the other 35%, right? And
Correct.
what they're looking for us is to help them with that 35%. So we don't necessarily have to be 50-50, but we could do like we talked earlier, offer 90 with no more than 100 and cap it at that point. Because our budget just can't take that kind of hit.
Well, that's a discussion between you and the village board.
Well, board members, what do you think?
Well, I guess if I had an opinion on this, what I would say is that you're going to go from one main crosswalk in town to 7.
6, but yes.
Well, 6 new ones, but the 7 total. But if you're having two right at the south end of town and 2 at the north end of town, they're literally a half block apart. It seems like maybe 1 at each end would make sense and not double.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thought including Lafayette was because it's a natural leeway down to the Macomb Orchard Trail. It's a much better route for families to bike down Lafayette than it is for them to come down St. Clair. There's also some additional monies out there for a possible trailhead park in conjunction with DTE down at the substation down at that end of the block. So looking at that scope of work and anticipating future projects, adding those 2 intersections on there now was why we included that in the scope of work. Again, eliminating Newberry was one of the biggest sort of wonky curb areas leading up to that quadrant in town. Not so much on the chamber side, but on the Masonic Temple side needs to be addressed. There's a lot of trip and falls with all those different levels of sidewalk that you have. So just fixing the ramp moving down there and then the access to Lafayette.
So to Carl's point, the Lafayette and the church crosswalk are very close to these other 2. What if we did take those out? That's $119,000.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, Lafayette with using as a bike route. and putting the bump outs there. There's already stripes for the turn at Lafayette, so you didn't lose any parking spaces putting a bump out. I think that's one of our bigger crossing areas right there from Speedway over to the Office Pub and back over to Zach's place. Church Street, maybe not. I don't think that intersection is very costly, but looking at people walking to the library, people walking to the post office.
But if you do the Lafayette,
when we walked it with Greg and we walked it with John, we walked it with Paul, was that if we had them at Church and Washington and Church Street, that's the original, like you drive, you see it, you're like, okay, wait, something is different, right? And then you have a little bit of time before you get to the next crossing. So I think it's just sort of a built upon, safety, getting everybody block by block, through our downtown. You don't see that in Rochester when you look at every single one of their intersections are ADA and their crosswalks. So you can cross at any point. People probably still dart out in the middle of Rochester Road because they don't want to walk to the corner, but I still think we have an obligation to offer people a safe route to traverse that town.
I do think that the speed limits in Rochester are lower. In downtown, it's 25.
That's what it is here in the village as well. It's 25.
Is this grant offered every year, or is this just a one-time 2020 thing?
It's been offered for several years in a row now. I can't say that it'll be forever, but it seems as though it's an annual thing for right now.
Yeah, it seems, I did see a comment from somebody in the chat where they said, there could potentially be 5 stops downtown going through, just slowing that pace of traffic when we know a lot of people are just trying to get home or go from point A to point B. Do we run the risk of people just circumventing, driving through downtown? Will they go around it? Does it discourage traffic downtown? It's a big change. I mean, let's be honest. It's a big change, and I don't want to speak for Megan, but I feel like she was asking that question to kind of say, if it's possibly going to be available again next year, are we just rushing it at this point? Are we trying to move on this too fast because the application's due in a week?
Well, it's not just that. It's that this project, if we submit the grant, this project still isn't going to be done for 2 more years, right? So we submit the grant. It's really a 2-year out project. We've got time to plan. We've got time to adjust the budget, and that's
2 years. 2 years of our budget money coming in.
Correct. Right. You don't have to have it all in the bank today. You just have to commit to knowing what your tax capture is going to be and what you're going to allocate it towards.
I'm not so much worried about the money itself being there. I'm worried about the details of the project. Like we're right now in a meeting trying to discuss 7 different points here and kind of make a decision, what can we do with and without really having any information or data to back it up. We don't know how many cars are passing through, how many in each direction, how many pedestrians are walking through. Have there been any of these? You see where they put the markers in the road where you get a traffic count. We don't have any of that information. It just feels like we're rushing this project a little bit. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, I sort of disagree because we've been talking about this for several years. Greg has brought this, at least to Village Council, a handful of times and said, please put pedestrian crossings down there. So it's not something new. It is something that we looked at with this whole streetscape design, like I said, about 10 years ago, in putting and following the master plan. Our master plan does call for pedestrian crossings at each one of those intersections. It also called for a whole the DDA expanded that scope for the whole streetscape redesign, but it is in our master plan.
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, maybe not rushing it in the big scheme of things, but I mean, in the last 6 years that I've been on the board, this has only been brought up in the last like 4 or 5 months. Like even the idea of revisiting this. So it may not be new to some people, but I think for the bulk of us here, it is a very new project to make such a big decision on when like literally a week to make a submission on that doesn't allow for a whole lot of discussion and really looking at the details on our end.
Well, we did have a month, right? I gave you the plan a month ago, so we could have, had some other discussions or some meetings on it. Questions could have been asked if you had some. That didn't happen. So here we are again today, and yes, the application is due in a week, and we don't have to do this project if the DDA isn't behind it. But we've been looking and talking about a bricks and mortar project that would really positively impact our central business district, because pretty much the DDA has been in charge of flowers and decorations for a long time. So
And I'd like to make a resolution. I'd like to say that we put our money aside so that we go with the village for this project, but I'd like to put a cap on it, not to exceed $100,000, because I don't think that the DDA can afford more than that if they want to do other projects downtown.
I think Greg was trying to chime in too, and I would like to hear from Greg, because this is.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You got, what's that?
Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, and I apologize. I've had another commitment, but I'm trying to get involved in both, and my apologies. This is obviously important to me. I've been watching this for years. I've owned that building 20 some years. I've watched countless times people, the close calls through these special events, through just normal days with mounds of snow and pedestrians trying to get across. I don't know as though it's got to be an all or nothing thing, or either or. I don't know why it can't be a both and, in the sense that we identify a few areas. And if I missed part of that reason, if we can't do that, I apologize. But, even if we focus on some of these ends, north end, the south end, the east side, the west side, and then see how they go. Or if we go to Lafayette right there in the mid block and slow that down, maybe we don't need 6 of them, but certainly putting in a few. It's going to take a year plus to get all this going. I would assume we could probably back out of doing a couple. We thought, hey, this kind of solves our problem. But I mean, guys, let's be realistic. What is a more meaningful downtown project than getting crosswalks, slowing things down, and making it more pedestrian friendly? We're not going to solve these problems with pumpkins, gourds, and flags and banners and stuff. This is something that is legit, that we can be proud of, that will make us stand out. Any community you go into, if it's a Holland or Rochester, even if you go to a K-Pac or a Maid or Emily City, they have bump outs at the crosswalks to aid in identifying. I, in the beginning, thought, well, yeah, if at least we have yield for pedestrian signs in the center. It doesn't have to be $1 billion project, but let's do something. Let's make this walkable. Let's make this safer for the community. That guys like Zach and I on one side of town can get over to Coney Island or go over to the Speedway or get a family over one way or another. So I've been working on this for years. I've looked at other communities, and everybody I talk to, everybody says, yeah, that's just normal. Why wouldn't you want to have crosswalks in your village or your town or your city? And we have none. It's one place in town to cross legally, and it's at the Four Corners, and that's probably one of the most dangerous crossings just because of all the turning traffic and moving parts. So with that, I'll leave it. I think you guys all know I'm passionate about it. The research has been done, and I think there's a good presentation on the table. And even if we commit to doing 4 of them or something, it would make a ton of sense.
Real quick, Greg, though, before you jump off,
Yep.
I think that was part of my concern, though, is that we're kind of being told that we have to, like, if we're going to apply for this, we have to apply how we want to proceed. We can't kind of a la carte it afterwards, or we would have to make those decisions now before Paul submits the application.
Well, I think we could apply for something, but I don't know. Paul would know, or maybe one of the other engineering firm folks. But, we start with something. In the end, we find out we don't need everything. I don't know. I don't have those answers, Zach, but to wait around another year or two and keep talking about it, that's just not, that's not what I signed up for. I'd like to see some things happen that make good sense. And then when we get to the parking thing and dumpster corrals and everything else, we can start hammering on that hard. But right now, the topic is crosswalks. Let's get a few in. We got money there. Let's figure it out.
Greg, would you
Christine, this is Anthony again. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This is Anthony again. Just a quick question. You had mentioned that there's a master plan, and my curiosity is, does that master plan include any major change to the road surfaces and the parking on Main Street that, if implemented, would end up basically undoing all this work and have to redo it again?
No, the master plan suggested possible angle parking, which is really just striping. If we were to move to an angle parking situation, it would not affect, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, the scope of this project.
Well, if you wanted to do angled parking but not the bump outs, you are correct. You could do that, assuming that the road commission agreed.
So Paul, my question is what Greg presented. We vote to do this, but then we realize that not all those crosswalks need to go in. Is that a possibility to remove them?
No, I think if you get the grant approved, then the committee that was reviewing all the applications assumed that you were going to do what you said you were going to do, and you can't go back later on and cut it in pieces. So that's why I was suggesting if you want to go with a smaller scope project, we can certainly modify the application now and do that now.
Greg, are you still on the line? He might.
Isn't there a motion on the floor?
Yes, there
Wait for
is.
a second. Is anyone going to
Carol.
second it?
Well, I want Carol to restate her motion.
The motion that I presented was to accept the project as presented, with the DDA being a partner with the village, not to exceed $100,000. They asked for 90. They said there's possible more later. There's a possibility prices go up, things like that. But I would say a not to exceed 100. We have that in our budget in order to, and we have 2 years to come up with more money. So that way we can still do other projects around town, like wayfinding and things like that, that would help our community.
Okay, do I have a second to that motion?
For
I'll
Carol's
second it.
motion? For Carol's motion to support?
Yeah, we're looking for a
Can you,
Somebody second.
can you hear me, Christine?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been trying to unmute here for a moment, so my apologies.
Did you hear Carol's motion? Kelly is looking for a support for Carol's motion.
It was a bit garbled. Can she hit it again? Go ahead.
Can we get somebody to restate that? I really cannot hear Carol, I'm afraid.
Okay, what I said was to accept the project as presented and to go 50-50 with the village, but not to exceed $100 of possible price increases.
Did you hear that, John?
I heard the 100,000. Is that
Okay,
DDA portion? That's the DDA portion of the project? It's not
She
the-
is stating to go with the project as presented tonight, go 50-50 with the village in costs not to exceed $100,000.
I'll second that.
Really quick. Okay, I know we have a motion and a second, but Paul, are you only allowed to apply for this TAP grant once?
No, if you didn't get it this time, you could try again.
No, I'm saying if you do get it, can you only be awarded the grant once?
Oh, you mean if you had a different type of project later on that you wanted to try for as well?
Well, let's say we omitted the two most expensive line items here, completed the projects, and then if it works, instead of going all in on this at every single stop, we could apply for another one down the road. Or can you only be awarded once?
No, you could be awarded again. I suspect that your chances might be somewhat diminished because there's obviously other jurisdictions that haven't gotten any money yet that they might want to look more favorably to.
So I'm looking at two projects on here, and if we omitted them, it would be every other crossroad, basically, and we could still we would be saving $200,000. Obviously, there's a portion of that is coming from the grant value. We'd be saving 35% of that cost. But I mean, instead of going completely all in on this, would we ever want to, look at it from that angle?
I'm not adverse to that idea to putting a motion out there that we go with a portion of it, be it 4 of them. If that's appropriate, we can do that and try for another grant down the road or pay for it ourselves down the road if we really need it. But I'm a fan of starting something.
Yeah, I'm not in disagreement with the entire scope of the project. It's just it seems like a lot, and it seems like we're going all in on this before we even know how it's going to affect the flow of traffic downtown, But I think we still have to, obviously we still have to vote on Carol's motion because it's on the table, but just a different way of going about it.
I think if you're going to eliminate 2, in my opinion, then you look to eliminate Washington and you look to eliminate Church Street. And I think that you keep the bump out locations so that, again, if people are crossing, they've got a better shot at crossing mid-block. If your concern is that they're every block and they may not be necessary, right? Keep the bike route going to Lafayette, fixing the corner that's at Newberry with those people that are traversing over to the park, and narrowing the scope down that way. It's not slicing as big of a chunk off as what you would like to see, Zach, but I still think that it's a pretty decent scope of work for the town.
Okay, Christine, Village Council approved the whole scope. Do we have the right as the DDA to take out 2 of these?
I would have to call a special meeting of the council because they approved it as presented.
Okay, so let's go around and take a roll with Carol's motion and Greg's second right now. Lisa?
All right. Humphreys?
Yes.
Tar? Tar?
Yes.
Okay. Brandt?
My question is, does this lock us into the entire project?
It does.
This motion does.
Then I say no.
Okay.
Rose?
No.
Poznanski?
No.
Parker?
I'm going to abstain. I feel that with the property I own, it would be an extreme boon to me, and I just don't feel comfortable voting on it. It's going to basically deeply improve the value of buildings I own. I have to abstain.
Malzahn?
Well, I could take the same position then, because it would deeply
Greg,
improve
you
my
can do
value.
what you want. I've given
Right.
you my reason.
I know I can, Bill. I know I can. I'm just stating that.
All right.
Malzahn?
Yes.
Hayes?
No.
Stevens?
Yes.
All right. Well,
Your motion did not carry. Motion
Okay.
failed.
So now I want Zach to come back and make his motion or was it?
yeah, I didn't make a motion, but I'm thinking about how I want to word this. So I want to make a motion to approve the presentation, but omit, based on President Malzahn's recommendation, the Main Street in Washington and the Main Street and Church portions of the crosswalks, and hopefully apply for those at a future date after this project has been completed.
Do I have a second?
I'd like to second.
I'll second that.
Rose?
I have a question, Zach or Christine. Aren't the accidents that have happened, haven't they have been on Washington Street, and mainly because of the Peach Festival?
There have been 2 down in that intersection, yes.
All right. Zach put the motion on the floor. Who seconded it?
I did a second.
Harwell.
Rose?
Rose seconded it? Okay. Lisa, will you do a roll call, please?
Okay, let me see if I got this right. So Zach, is it a motion to approve the presentation, but to omit the crosswalks at Washington and Church based on President Malzahn's suggestion?
Correct. And this would obviously be, it would be dependent on the village board agreeing to
Omitting.
changes to the plan.
Correct.
That's not part of your motion.
Doesn't have to be.
Okay, all right. So Hayes? Hayes?
Yes.
Rose?
Yes.
Parker?
Abstain.
Poznanski?
I'm also going to abstain, as I'll have to vote on it at council level, I suppose.
Okay. Brandt?
Yes.
Humphreys?
No.
Tar?
Yes.
Malzahn?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your motion carries.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for the time. Thank you, Paul, for your presentation tonight. I assume Christine would call a special meeting with the village council to see if they are in agreement to our recommendation.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, Christine, could I just verify there's that screen you just had up about the resolution?
Oh, yes,
The application's asking that the board actually acknowledge all these items that are in the resolution. I wasn't sure if that was done. So there is a commitment about operating and maintaining, but I guess maybe that's the Board of Trustees that need to do that.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can draft that for the council then.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item on our agenda for this evening is the Christmas Lights Subcommittee report.
Kelly, all I was going to tell you, I ordered the lights for all of the trees on the buildings. They actually shipped. I have an email. They should be here tomorrow, is what it looks like. And the bows were ordered, and Megan, I believe they had you on there as a contact. They were supposed to contact you before they dropped them at the DDA. Or excuse me, at the DPW.
I have not gotten an email about that.
Okay, so they should be shipped, and then the lights should be here tomorrow. So I can get with Carl and figure out, how we're gonna get those up.
So are we still looking at asking the building owners for input on the greens?
Well, that is still okay, yes, we are. Matt is still looking to figure out what he can get, how much he can get it for, what they're going to cost. That is not part of the bid that we have tonight. That's completely separate from that bid. The bid that we have out there does not include hanging those on the buildings or anything. This is just the regular stuff that they've done all along, but adding those.
That's Cold Frame Farm. Did you?
Right.
Did you open the bid?
No, I have not. I have it right here. I have not opened it. It is sealed. I will not open it until you tell me to.
Oh, well, should we open that?
Well, it's a separate line item. Are we?
Yeah, it is.
That?
It is.
Oh, okay. All right. I guess my question is, if we're still going to be asking the building owners for monies for the greenery, we kind of need to get on that and give them a heads up, right?
Right, and they're working on it. He's got 2 contacts, and I know that they were making phone calls to find out what the pricing was going to be. So they have not contacted me. I'm just waiting to hear from them. I talked to Lisa on Saturday, and she said that Matt had been in contact, but he was waiting to hear back. So I guess it's the availability, if they've got people to work, what they can get, what they can't get. So I think everybody's kind of up in the air still. So maybe they'll have some better answers this week.
Okay. So is the subcommittee reconvening to?
We probably should. Megan and I, and we could contact the business owners and the residents and see if they wanted to participate again.
Okay.
Your thought.
Megan?
Sorry, I was unmuting. If that's what we need to do,
Okay.
that's what we'd like to do, then yeah, help out.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So I guess the next item is the bid opening.
Okay. So this is the only bid we got. I did post this last week on the website. It was up there. And this is the only one that did come in. Again, this one does have, it's all of the stuff that they have normally done in the past with the addition of the bows.
I thought they were doing Christmas trees on the buildings.
What's that, Carol?
I thought they were doing Christmas trees on the buildings.
Those, well, Carl and some of the other business owners in town are going to help with that. And they're going to have to talk and figure out what all they're going to do and what all Matt needs to help with.
Carol, didn't you not say that you had people that could help you with that?
He's drifted away for a few minutes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is from Cold Frame Farms. It's got their address and their phone number submitted to the Romeo Downtown Development Authority. Submitted for electrical services on downtown Romeo streetscape, holiday decorations, winter 2021, holiday season, Romeo Michigan. Description of work to be performed, bid per request for quote downtown Romeo streetscape holiday. Bid also includes following not listed in scope of work: check and replace lamps on all snowflakes, pole decorations, contact and coordinate with Romeo Police Department on installation and takedown dates, provide cleanup after installation and takedown, check all lights and decorations daily. And the bid is $16,500. Payment terms are 60% upon acceptance of the proposal in 2020, 30% due upon satisfactory completion of installation, and final 10% of total due upon completion of removals. Repair and maintenance, BDA lights through period of installation not to exceed $1,100 during period. Contract will record all dates of repairs and types of repairs and coordinate with one representative of DDA throughout the period. Installation will be completed November 7th or November 14th, depending on the greens availability and delivery. Through mid-January, installation will be provided by Matt Jarosh. 5 installers will be coordinated and designed by Lisa Jarosh. Matt's a licensed electrician. Matthew Joseph Electrical is owned and operated by Matthew J. Jarosh, state of Michigan licensed and insured master electrician for over 29 years. Matthew Joseph Electrical is fully insured. In accordance with the request for bids, applicable certificates of insurance will be provided upon acceptance of the proposal. He participated in a voluntary basis in 2008 seasonal installation, providing time, material, and equipment as needed, and as such has a clear understanding of the project requirements and design intent. Complete Village of Romeo downtown installations included the following 10 years, 2009 through 2019. Lisa is a licensed landscape architect in the state of Michigan. She worked with the Romeo DDA and designed and documented the project in 2008 while working at Hamilton Anderson Associates in Detroit, Michigan. Lisa has coordinated and worked on the project from its inception in 2008 through 2019. Currently, she owns and operates Cold Frame Farm, LLC, a four-season sustainable farming operation, contributing organically grown produce, herbs, fruits, and floral material to the surrounding community while establishing an ecologically diverse model of agriculture. References are available upon request. Notes regarding unexpected repairs, replacements, and defective equipment and materials. Cost for repairs and replacements due to natural disasters or circumstances beyond the contractor's control, as well as the defective installation equipment and materials provided by the DDA are specifically excluded from this proposal. Any such repairs and replacements will be made at the expense of the DDA with the DDA's prior written approval. Contractor will provide labor at $50 per hour, and DDA will provide the installation equipment and materials as required. All work described in the proposal will be performed in accordance with the documents and RFQ is provided by the DDA. If deemed inadequate, defective installation equipment and material will be repaired and replaced with the DDA's prior written approval at the DDA's expense as more fully described in the note above. Unexpected repairs, replacements, and defective equipment and material above. We appreciate this opportunity to serve you and look forward to your response. Should you have any questions or require any additional information, please contact Matthew Jarosh or Lisa Jarosh at the following numbers.
So they came in at 16,000?
16.5, yep.
We
So
budgeted
they're up 4,000 over last year?
That's what it says.
How much more is this over last year?
4,000.
Why such a huge increase?
I don't know. Maybe possibly the cost of greens. I have no idea. I can ask that question and advise. I can ask the question and let you know. That's the only thing I can do.
So the scope of work hasn't changed at all?
The only thing that was added in the scope of work was putting up those bows. I mean, we did talk about the Christmas tree lights on the building, but that was not included in the bid at all.
I guess I would like a statement as to why the $4,000 increase over last year.
Yeah, I can ask and what I can do is I can send her an email and I can attach everybody to it and ask for a response.
Okay, please do that,
Well,
Lisa.
how much have you spent so far on lights? Do you know?
The lights were, I think they were, hang on one second. These are just the lights for the trees on the building.
Well, whatever lights you ordered.
It didn't.
The bows were $2,212.75. And the lights for the trees on the building, like the ones that Carl had, were $1,582.73.
Say that one more time.
The bows were $2,212.75. And the lights were $1,582.73.
Okay.
We do need to contact the bow company, though, because they did charge us tax. The lighting company did not charge us tax.
We should not have tax.
Right, so we need to contact them. The tax was $125.25.
So that's $37.95.48.
Mm-hmm.
And we budgeted for the lights $2,500
Right.
and $12 for the install.
Yeah, we're way over.
Yep.
Well, I believe we had talked about some of that that $5,000 for new banners. Weren't we taking that into account? Like we were just, we weren't going to spend that on the new banners, so we had included that in like it could.
Yeah, you had included. You had said we could take from the $5,000 for the banners. There was $1,500, or excuse me, I believe there was $1,000 that was left over in the one that was holiday lighting. So there was $6,000 there, and then we talked about $1,000 out of farmers market. But then there was a couple of other spots too.
Well, there's 5,000 because we didn't do the harvest day.
And then there was 5,000 because we didn't do the harvest days.
I mean, we've got money, but the point is, why the big jump?
Well, that's what I'm going to have to find out. I will email her as soon as we're done with the meeting, and I will attach everybody in the email and ask what the price jump is. Is it the cost of greens, or what is it?
And will you include a copy of the quote that we received in that email as well? Just attach it in there so we can all have a copy, since we're not
the cold frame farm quote.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
I'll have to. I have to get it to you. Is what I'll do.
Well, I'm assuming we have to give them an answer shortly too, correct?
I'm assuming we would, so I would.
Can I ask a question regarding that answer then? What if the question was going to be, what's the reason for the increase? But could we just simply counter and just say, if you can hold the line for whatever the reason was, then, it's something we could move forward with. If that's something that we would want to agree to.
Or even split the difference, that could be.
Jump.
That could be another compromise too,
Well, I guess we got to get their answer back to what is driving this increase by 4,000.
Yeah, that's
what does time allow? I mean, if we're saying they need an answer, so this could be their answer, is to say whether it be, as Zach said, split the difference or hold the line, then we can give them their answer.
But if they don't go for it, then we're out. Nobody doing it.
I don't know if we're in a position this year to do it with the increase.
We have the money.
We have the money, yes.
But
But
I guess,
that's not the
okay,
point.
do we have the ability to vote if you get an answer back? Can we jump online and get a vote on this from them at that point?
You can always
can
do
do-
it not to exceed. That's your best bet. If you want to spend X amount of dollars, you make a motion, you do it not to exceed.
Okay.
If they buy it, then you're good. If they don't, then you either have a special meeting or you wait till your next meeting and offer Plan B.
Okay.
And I'll make a motion that we accept the bid as granted, but it's to accept the bid as granted, as given. Period.
Lisa, hanging those big bows across the street, that wasn't on there in the scope of work?
No, it was not, because they weren't purchased. There wasn't, I didn't put it.
Making sure, because I know they were involved in that conversation, so I didn't know.
They were involved in that conversation, and that's why I think I need to clarify this. I'm going to clarify this. He may have been thinking that, we're still going to have him do the electrical on those. So if that's the case, then it should bring the price down.
I mean, you can always call a special too. You can just call
You could always call a special. It only requires 18 hours.
I think we have Lisa contact them, get the information, and then we call a special back.
We have a motion on the floor by Parker.
Okay.
I'll withdraw it. Then we can have a special meeting. Okay,
Thank you.
let's move on.
Okay.
So, do we have to make a motion for that, or we just?
I'll make a motion to table it until we get the discovery done.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Hang on 1 second. Melzan,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Humphreys,
Yes,
Brandt,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Poznanski,
Yes.
Parker,
Yeah.
Tar. Is he still here?
I think he's off. Technically, he's still listed, but I think yeah.
All right. Stevens,
Yes.
motion carries. I will contact her tomorrow and I will get back with you and we can reschedule a meeting.
Thank you. Our last, a village update on any new business activity.
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, so the restaurant that's going into the lock.
Wait, hold on. Wasn't that under unfinished business?
Yeah.
We still had another line item under new business for the FOIA request.
Oh, sorry, I didn't write that down.
That's all right. So I just wanted that on the agenda because the DDA received a FOIA request. And as far as I know, we've never received one before. So I just kind of wanted to get everybody's idea of how this should be handled because only certain board members were made aware of the request. However, I think the entire board should be getting a copy of this and aware that there's been a FOIA request made and what it pertains to. I don't know how you guys feel about that as a board. And, even as members here, what is the timeline for getting people information? How are we conducting business? Because I think a lot of us are using personal emails versus the DDA emails. Some of us don't even have DDA emails. I really think because of this, it kind of brings to light some things for how we all choose to conduct business And I really think we need to get a move on with getting everybody their own DDA email so that we can have business conducted that way instead of some people getting Gmail and some people getting their business email. That way it's just a little better organized.
Okay, I was CC'd on the FOIA request, so I was aware, but I thought the people that were FOIA'd were a subcommittee to the DDA that worked on the benches. Is that correct?
I don't know specifically. I think, who was on the email, Lisa?
I sent it to you, to Megan, to Carl, Kelly, and Christine.
Okay.
I sent it to Kelly because she's the chair. Sent it to Christine because that's who requested it. She's the village president. To you, Carl, and Megan, because we all worked on the benches together. I don't recall that John wasn't on the board at the time. I don't recall Greg being on the board at the time. Bill wasn't really in the discussion of where they were going and where they went and what happened with them and where they are or anything. So it seemed to me to send it to the people who worked on it the most. A FOIA request, you have 10 days to respond within a reasonable amount of time.
10
I
days.
did send a request to extend it for the simple reason that I am only here one day a week.
Well, I mean, but I mean, Bill was still involved in the meetings where things were voted on. I just think it's something that should. Why wouldn't it go in everybody's packet? How would that work from a village standpoint, Christine? If it was something that was made at the village level, are the trustees made aware of?
We have a designated FOIA coordinator, which is the village clerk. That's Catherine Trapp. So all FOIA requests come to her. It's her obligation as the coordinator to fulfill that. Whatever means she needs to utilize to get the information to the requester, that's what happens. So you have 5 days to acknowledge receipt of the FOIA. You do have the option to ask for an extension.
Go ahead.
Is it my understanding, because I wasn't on the board either at that time, that nobody knows where the benches went from the DPW?
As far as where I think they were at the DPW, and the people were the people whose benches they were told that they could pick up their benches from the DPW.
Okay, I'm just going to put it out there. Why does Tad have 2 of them on his lot?
You'd have to ask Tad that question.
Because he didn't sponsor those benches.
No, I wouldn't imagine so. I know the plaques were directly distributed to the people who donated, the families that donated.
So we don't know where the benches went or who has them?
The last we know is they're at DPW.
So people just drove to the DPW and took them away.
Before I initiate a police investigation into the receipt of stolen merchandise, I need to verify who owned those benches. I have people requesting that information from my office. I have an obligation to fulfill that. Therefore, I have to ask the board and the subcommittee who was in charge of those benches and their removal and their storage.
But I guess my question is, to that note, why not just ask us?
I did.
When?
I asked Lisa that. Mm-hmm.
You asked Lisa?
Yeah, as the DDA director, that's where I went to, and I asked your chair, Kelly Stevens, who didn't have an answer.
Okay.
I do not. I have an email from Carl. I know Carl made a lot of phone calls and got the plaques back to people. I've pulled up all of the emails. I've pulled all of my text messages. I know there was discussion at one point in time about do we put it on the board? Do we put it on the agenda I know that it was stated at one point in time that if people didn't take all of the benches back, that the village would like to have 4 for the cemetery. I've gotten calls here too from Ned and Alan Hewitt. They asked about a plaque, but we didn't have a plaque. Carl, I believe you said you took off about 9.
There was 11 that I took off that were still on the benches.
And I think DPW had a couple stashed from over the years that had fallen off.
I have those too. I've got those. I've got one from the Juliet Garden Club that the DPW had, and I have one for Roger and Jean Heim. Here, I'll hang it. I'll put it up this. Maybe one of you guys know who these people are, because I have no idea.
But I guess how many benches were there removed?
In one of my text messages, Tim said there were about 20.
I'd say 20 or less. It was right around there, 17 to 20.
I know there was 3 in the park.
Yeah, that's including the park.
That included the park.
So why didn't the cemetery get any of these? So we don't really know where they went.
They were all taken to DPW as far as I know.
Right, but it says no trespassing, so somebody went back there and got them and took them.
There are 2 at the DPW.
There's 2 there?
There are 2 out of 20. There are 2.
Do we know, does anybody, Carl or Megan, do we know the people whose benches they were, if they took them or not? Because I know I talked to Jay. He said that they didn't want any because they were too beat up. He took the plaque, but he didn't take any himself. Do we have confirmation on the people whose benches they were that were notified, whether or not they took them?
I can go down my list of the ones I returned and what happened if you want. I know Mary McLaughlin. I gave her plaque, and I believe she told me that she picked up a bench. I gave Jeff Fritz his plaque back, and I told him about the benches. Same with Westview Orchard. Mary Raymond was part of Brokers Network and had purchased the bench at that time. She does have a bench, and she's going to finish it and put it behind her building. Chester Zakowski, he got his plaque back, and I believe he took a bench. I think Marion told me that he got one. Frank Chaika and I took Mrs. Rapp's bench out to her. That was the one that was on the corner by the Coney Island. We installed the Mr. Rapp's plaque back on the bench that's in front of Coney after the new ones were installed, because we had talked at a meeting that we were going to put that plaque back. McMillan's, they got their plaque back, but I don't know if they took a bench. I have DNN Bank's plaque because there's no one to give it back to. I'm willing, anyone in the village can have it if they'd like it at the office. And the Rotary Club, I have that plaque, and I have not been able to get a hold of anybody at the number that is on out there.
So you listed 4 possible people that have benches. There's 2 at the DPW. That's 6. We know there's 2 on Tad's lot. That's 8. Do we know where any of the other ones are?
There's one on Justin Parker's property.
So that's 9.
That's why we need to have an accounting for what happened to them. So we need to get a list of who has them, who is authorized to take them, so then we can have the police investigate if the rest of them went missing.
But I don't think we authorized anybody outside of the people we had information on plaques or family members that there was anything to pick up. I mean, Lisa and I emailed about the 4 to 6 that the village wanted for the cemetery, and that was something that was discussed via email. And I don't know if there was did anybody notify the village that they could pick up 4 to 6 benches for the cemetery?
The cemetery has 0.
No, I'm saying, but were you guys notified that they were then available for pickup?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Lisa, do you know if anybody was notified?
I asked him to set 4 aside for them. And if they're not there, then he obviously didn't set them aside.
So how do you want to continue with this? I think we need to have a procedure for the FOIA request, right?
Yeah, I agree. And that's my biggest concern out of this. It's that we've, and I wasn't going to say who submitted the FOIA request, but it's more just from a standpoint of is that how we're gathering information from board members? And, that's why I asked, did you ask anybody? Because normally if I'm working with somebody, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask and say, hey, do you know this information? Does the subcommittee have this in a report, or is it something they can break down? It's just odd when it's coming from your own board. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Happens all the time. I get FOIA requests from my board members all the time for documentation. It's part of the FOIA process and the Freedom of Information Act that we as office holders have the courtesy and the obligation to give the information that's requested.
Well, I guess my question, being new to this, is, okay, we named off 2 people that have 3 of the benches. How did they get them? Who said they could have them?
I mean, I can't speak for other people. I know nobody asked us for benches.
Permission or any?
We wouldn't have, I don't think anybody on this board would have given permission to somebody to take a bench without running it through the board, because we talked plenty of times that it was going to be anything left. I said, it's anything that's not going to be donated to the village or to the people who took it. It's basically at that point, who do we donate it to? And that's a question that would always be brought to the board to make that final decision, whether it's going to be Starkweather or the library or anything like that. So
I guess in the future,
I don't know. I can't answer that question.
So I guess in the future, a procedure to that, even when we do collect our old stuff and it's taken to the DPW, who do we offer to? Who has authority to say, you can go out there and pick one up, or you can have it?
Right. Well, in the past, I mean, we donated there. It was like, remember those, the big planners that were on Main Street?
Yeah.
We sold, I think we sold some of those, and then I think we donated the rest. And I think it was I forget where they ended up going to.
Emmett's has got them across the front of their.
I think did Emmett's pay for them though?
I think they did.
Zach, it was a conversation between you and I about what to do with them. And we tried to donate them to the schools, and the schools didn't want them. And we tried to give them away to Romeo Community Schools. We tried to give them to a bunch of different schools, and nobody wanted them. Emmett's expressed interest in them, expressed interest to Ray Van Steen-Kisty that they were interested in them. You and I had text messages back and forth between the two of us, and I said that they had offered to pay for them, and Ray had talked to them. They had offered to pay for them. They paid for them. We used the money that they paid for them to put new dirt in the pots that are still existing, in the ones that we still have existing in Parker Alley, in Starkweather Alley, and behind the office pub. And it was also to put some dirt in the corner back there behind the office. That was
the pots
was used for, and it was, and Ray, they paid, I believe they paid $50 a piece for them. I don't remember if they took them all. I don't think they did.
So we're probably off topic here.
Right. But that's what happened with us.
Okay, so with this FOIA request, I guess you guys have to get the information.
Well, I have information here. I have everything that I have. Technically, I would be the FOIA coordinator, so I have everything that I have available to me. I have the emails that I had. I have the text messages that I had. I've printed them all. I will be giving them to Christine. I asked Zach because I didn't know if he had any. I asked Megan because I didn't know if she had any. Same thing with Carl. I will have to ask the DPW exactly the date that they took them out and exactly how many they stored and when they noticed them missing.
Because nobody knows how anybody got those, correct, on this board?
The ones that Thad and that Justin have are important. For God's sakes, why doesn't someone call them and tell them to turn them back? And why are we wasting our time on this?
Zach asked for a FOIA procedure to be put in place.
Okay, Lisa, why don't you give them a call and tell them to bring them back? That it's a problem. Can you do that?
I don't have any information for Mr. Parker.
I don't know if that's necessarily Lisa's job.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I didn't tell them to take them.
Zach, she's talking about a police report. For Christ's sake, just call them and ask for it back. And I can give you this phone number, but my phone's tied up right now. It's Glenn Parker Electric. You've got it there.
We still need to determine where the other ones are. And I'm sure that if we have to, launch an investigation, we still can't account for 20. I think we accounted for 9 or 10. So there's still a significant number that are missing.
We got rid of them because we thought they were.
It's an asset of the village. Therefore, we have to account for them. People are asking me, where are the benches? And I see 2 over on this lot or that lot. How can I get one? Well, okay, then we need a process in place. If we're going to sell them, if we're going to give them away by lottery, it doesn't matter what it is. We just have to have a process. We talked about that briefly when we purchased the new benches and we were going to get ready to take them down, but we never came to some conclusion about what we were going to do with them. It's a lesson learned that, it's very important.
Would you like us to put it out there that if you have one and you weren't contacted by Carl or Zach or myself, that to have one to turn it back in?
That's entirely up to you if you want to do that. I still need an accounting for all 20 of them before.
Did we confirm with DPW that they took 20 back?
Well, that's what Lisa's going to confirm exactly how many, but I believe it was 20.
Do you honestly think they kept track of them?
Yeah, they took them all down, so they should have them on their work logs.
And some of them were junk.
Like broken.
And broken. I mean, do you expect that they counted how many they threw right in the dumpster?
I say, did they throw any away?
They would still have the wrought iron pieces, even if they didn't have the wooden slats. Remember,
they were rotted, for Christ's sake.
Rusted away.
No, the wrought iron was rusted apart. That was the reason they took them down.
There was at least 2. There was a dangerous one in the park, and there was a dangerous one out on the street.
That one in the park was taken down 2 years ago before Harvest Days.
Yeah.
So that one was taken down before the benches were ever even purchased. The one that was in
there
the
were
park.
A couple on Main Street where the cross pieces were just rotted out. Period. They were just rusted. They were gone. They were garbage. They were dangerous. So if anybody knows of anybody who's got a bench, tell them to bring it back.
Well, but regardless of that, Bill, we have the
agreed.
FOIA, we have the FOIA request. Then everybody who's has any communication will be giving it to Lisa, which is not a problem. My concern is more how we're handling this moving forward, how we're handling how we correspond. Are we Are we all going to correspond via DDA email? Because I don't want to have to go through 2 years worth of text messages anytime somebody FOIAs something. You know what I mean? That's not how I want to spend my afternoon.
I've never even looked at my DDA email, nor do I have any intention of it.
Well, I do, Zach's point, I do believe we need a procedure in place. So Lisa, if you could come up with an outline going in the future to how the DDA handles that.
And do you guys disagree that if a FOIA request comes through to our board that the rest of the board shouldn't be made aware of it? I mean, I didn't know this.
No, I think we all should be.
I didn't know this was an issue until Friday. You know what I mean? And there's a portion of our board who didn't know it was an issue until just now.
I agree.
I agree.
So it could be part of the procedure. So we're not making a motion, we're just making a suggestion that Lisa put together a procedure, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
She still has to follow the Freedom of Information Act laws and rules of how the process is handled for the requested information, but certainly how you handle it as a board amongst yourselves, that can be part of your rules and procedures, for sure.
Christine, do you guys have cameras at the DPW?
No, we do now. We didn't until we realized that benches were missing. We also have now a closed fence, so people who were utilizing the trash pile to take their clippings now can't access the site because people were clearly trespassing where they didn't belong. So now it's cordoned off and we've installed cameras.
Okay. Unfinished business. If you have an update from the Village Hall, Christine, on any new businesses or what's going on with the restaurant that's proposed for the locks cleaners?
I have not received any updates.
Okay.
Kelly, I've rented the vacant chiropractor's office to an audiologist.
Oh, Nicole.
Yeah.
Ratan.
I mean, this is not something that would come to the village. She is what she is, and it was an office.
Well, I knew because she's a member of the chamber and she told us that she was looking to come to Romeo.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
We did issue the zoning certificate of compliance and AAA has officially opened, so that's good. We got the last of the documentation that was required, so if that's an update, I guess we can give that as an update, but they're officially opened.
Okay.
I think
They were
the
permitted
PNC,
to
their
be
lobby's
in
back
office?
open again as of last week, I believe.
Who's open?
PNC.
Oh, they opened. Yay.
They have, you can go in the back door and they have someone checking people in, making sure they've got masks on and limiting the number of people there.
Okay, perfect. Any other board member comments?
Board member comments. I just thought we should probably briefly mention trick-or-treating in the Central Business District. Village Council did approve the road closure from Newberry down to Washington Street. Police on one end, fire on the other end. Roadblocks at St. Clair from 11 to 1. They will sound the siren at 11. Siren again at 1 o'clock. Parks and Rec is doing a DJ dance party in the park from 12 to 4. And so I just think we need to figure out a way to communicate the trick-or-treating, at least to the business owners in town. I've sort of been talking to those that I know, but our phone here is ringing off the hook between, are we decorating Tilson Street? Are we trick-or-treating on the 31st? You know, surprisingly, we get at least a dozen to 2 dozen calls a day. People want to know if they should come out and trick-or-treat. So,
or is Tilson
I'm telling everybody, yes, it's business as usual. It's voluntary participation. If you want to hand out candy, mask up, hand out candy. The governor's restrictions now have been rescinded by the Michigan Supreme Court, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. If we have 21 days or not 21 days or what's going on. Macomb County is telling us that they are not enforcing masks. Oakland County is saying they are. I just think it's, you know, everybody's personal choice, how they want to feel safe and what do they want to do. So trick-or-treating, we just need to let the business know that to expect kids, right? We're still closing down the street. They need to plan accordingly. So if anybody's got an email blast that they can send out, if, I don't know what the communication list is that Lisa even maintains, to let everybody know of the decision.
I have a list that I send to the business owners, and so I can start with that.
Okay. Yeah.
Do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I'll make that motion. It is 9:20.
I'll second.
Roll call, Lisa?
Hang on 1 minute. Milzan,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yep.
Parker,
Yeah.
Brandt,
Yep.
Poznanski,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Humphreys.
Yes, ma'am.
Is Greg still here?
No.
Stevens.
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned.
Night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.